podcast about comics. A podcast about comics.
Welcome back to another episode of A Podcast About Comics. This is your boy T'Challa BP74 and my man
Kei'Tano.
We are back in the house this evening, all to talk about the Batman. But before we get going, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Follow us with all news, rumors, confirmations, and gossip. Kei'Tano, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing excellent. How about you?
I'm excited. I'm ready to talk all about the Batman, baby.
I'd like to start off by saying I really would have liked to have watched it again before doing this.
Okay. Well,
that was like a 3-hour film.
It is. 3 hour. Spoiler alert, though. Before we get going, if you haven't watched the Batman, go ahead and turn this off. Here's your spoiler alert right here, right now. Because we're going to be talking about the Batman. We don't want to spoil anything for you. It's been about a week since the movie has dropped, and we are excited to talk about it. So if you're ready, strap on in. Let's ride. So, Kei'Tano, man, listen.
Yeah.
This is probably the second best Batman movie I've seen. As far as
second best.
Second best. Let me put it to you like this.
Okay.
Out of all the different Batman that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Real life action movies, right? Real life movies. This is probably the second best story arc that I'm seeing.
Okay.
Following very closely behind
the Dark Knight,
behind Christopher Nolan trilogy.
Well, now, are you saying like the trilogy is like Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, Dark Knight Returns, and then this? Well, or are you saying like one of those from the trilogy is number one? Listen, and then
man, this no. This is a whole new thing, right? I think that trilogy, I'm looking at that as one, because I guarantee you we're gonna get a trilogy out of this.
Yeah, I think at the very least, right? At the very least, you're gonna get 3 films out of this.
Yeah. So from the way they start, this is definitely shaping up to give me like the second best vibes. You know, you want to start off with grades first? Let's start off with grades. Okay,
that's fine.
I gave it a very strong B, maybe an A-. You know,
I don't do the pluses and minuses.
I know you don't do the pluses and minuses. And if I am going to say a solid grade, I will give it. I would give it an A, because I can look over some of the things that I saw that I had a problem with.
Yeah. Right? And we'll get into that.
Yeah,
we'll get into that. Yeah.
All right. So I'll give it
an A. For me, it's really hard for me to give it anything outside of an A, because this is a different kind of experience. And unless you have had some of the same experiences that my household has, you may not know where we're coming from or where I'm coming from.
Okay.
But so where I'm sitting there, I'm watching it. Mind you, I've seen very few trailers. I'm a Nolan guy.
Okay.
Right? So it's like I'm coming in there just like hoping they don't F it up.
Okay.
Right. That's really all I'm looking for.
Okay.
Because the Nolan films were so good.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm getting the tone of how like not grunge, but more of like a what do you call like when the teenagers are like when they wear dark stuff all the time?
Gothic,
right? It gives you that Gothic feel, right?
Okay.
Almost like do you remember what was Bruce Lee's son's name that did that?
The Crow. I think
right.
Was that Jason?
I just know he's elite.
Okay.
Right.
Brandon Lee.
Yeah, Brandon Lee. Right. So it has this like Gothic feel to it, but with a modern touch of like today's technology and so on and so forth. But the thing is that I noticed as I'm going through this movie is it starts to remind me and feel like the video games that I'd played in the past.
Yes.
And my kids are in the theater with me at the same time, and they're having the same thoughts.
Okay.
So that tells me that this is probably something that was done on purpose, as opposed to something that was, that was just happened to be.
Oh, yeah.
So because of that, I feel like it's really hard for me to give it anything besides an A, because they literally created an experience that's like something I've experienced at home, but without having to have a controller in my hand.
Yeah.
And some of the things that you saw, I don't know if they were like to spec as far as what you see in the video game, but some of the sets even had you feeling like you were going through that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that makes me say that it's hard for me to give it anything other than A is because not only is Batman a crime fighter, but he's a detective.
He's a detective,
and you really get to see that.
You get to see that detective work, right?
Yeah.
Even from the clues, the way how he broke everything down, and from the missing thumb to say a thumb drive, all these different little gems and nuggets.
Oh, it was
phenomenal.
Like I said, I can't give it anything besides an A, just because there's so many aspects that they weaved into this film. And I've seen some reviews where they complain about the length of the film, but you and I are kind of just saying, whereas if you give me an engaging story, I don't care if it's 3 hours or 4 hours long. If I can, like, I sat and watched through Justice League.
Yeah.
And what was that, 4 hours?
That was 4 hours.
So needless to say, I can sit down. If the story is engaging, I can truly watch it, and enjoy the story. However, if I were to compare this to individual films, it's definitely
it sits up there with The Dark Knight. Not as good, but it sits up there with it.
The Dark Knight, man, the acting in The Dark Knight really shined as well.
Understand too, right? That when The Dark Knight is made, remember that's the second one out of the chamber, right?
Right.
This one is the first.
This is the first one.
This is the first one out of the chamber, right? And for the first one out of the chamber, for it to hit as hard as this hit, I expect Matt Reeves to take it up a few more notches with the next one. Because everything that he wanted to do that he didn't get to do on this one, I guarantee he's going to do on the next one.
On the next one. The thing is, I like the way the story picks up like this is like year 2.
Yeah, 2 years in, yeah.
Yeah, and you're still seeing him make some mistakes. You're seeing how good of a detective he is, and you are seeing how much of a troubled human being this man is. And that's something that we don't typically get.
Not just do we get to see him in year 2, right? But he's not even branded that much as the Batman yet, right?
Right, he's Vengeance.
A lot of people are calling him Vengeance. And he even uses it. He uses it in one of his famous quotes, "I am vengeance."
Right. All right, so let me paint this picture. You're sitting in the theater, you're watching this film, and the gang chases the guy from the subway, and they got him backed up. They get the kid from Titans. I don't know his name.
Tim Drake.
But they're like,
You mean the actor who he plays?
The actor.
Okay.
They got the actor. The actor who played him.
Yeah.
And they're like, knock him out. And then the camera goes to the dark hallway. And I love the way they use. It's completely black. I mean, this isn't even shadow. This is a dark corridor. And you hear the footsteps. Even before you get there for a minute, let's talk about the dark corridor, right? Because they showed it that people were doing some cruddy stuff, and they saw a dark hallway or dark corridor or a dark alley and couldn't see anything that was coming out of the alley. But at this point, he's known to walk out of the shadows. Yeah.
So there's clearly word going around Gotham that he comes out.
Word is going around, but you can tell that this is still new though, because they don't even think that this guy is going to show up. And when he does show up, they're like, who is this guy? Like, almost like, do you see the getup on this dude? And then when he fights the first guy and he pounds him and he says, "I am vengeance," you can tell that there's this brutality to the way he fights.
Yeah.
And it's the type of brutality like, yo, this guy has some issues that he's got to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And he's working them out with his fist. So, and you know, and then you find out, like, when he goes to the first crime scene that he goes to with Gordon, or the first one we see, he's slowly walking through the room. He's slowly looking at every aspect. And you don't find out till later, that's not for dramatic purpose. That's because he's recording everything he sees. I mean, it's phenomenal, man. It's phenomenal. Just that segment alone lets you know that, you know, you always say this when we start the cast, strap in, let's ride.
That's right.
And if you haven't strapped in at the point where he goes through that subway scene and then into Gordon's scene, and then like people are like, yo, what's he doing here? But yet people stand aside and let him do his work. Dude, strap in and let's ride.
That's right.
That's what that was.
What I love about here though is just how smart he is as well, right? But it showed me that he's smart, but there was something that Matt Reeves did that I didn't like. And this was one of the issues. I had a couple of issues, right? One of the issues I had was when he took his shirt off. He looked like
he's bony.
He looked like this.
He's skinny.
He looked like this anorexic kid. So I felt like he needed a few sandwiches, right? I felt like if he bulk up for the second movie, that'd be great, right?
Yeah.
Because it'll show that he's growing. But
do you think that he has some type of enhancements on his suit that allows him to be that skinny and fight?
Well, we get to see that his suit has some
bulletproof.
Yeah, so it got a level of Kevlar, but a level of armor within his suit, right? But it also bothered me that when he removed it, he looked so tiny. Bruce Wayne's Batman is 6'4", 250 pounds, 245 pounds.
And this is easily solved with just getting a stand-in. They do stand-ins all the time.
It is. Also, there were times when he was going by cops, and I don't know if he was standing on something or if the cop was crouched down, but the cop like looked up at him as this towering, menacing.
It's most likely just camera angles.
Camera angles, right? But when he took his shirt off, he looked like he pales in comparison to what Bruce Wayne / Batman looked like, right?
Yeah.
First problem I had. Second problem I had, when he takes the blast to the face, right? I think at this point, this is the crooked cop.
Why is the bottom of his face still on there?
You see what I'm saying? There's no damage to his face. And I'm like, come on, man. That's C4, man. That's explosives, right?
Yeah. And even though he put his hands in front of his face, or one of his hands in front of his face, he still should have had some physical damage to his face.
Also, when he's flying, when he jumps off the thing and he glides, whatever, he hits his head, and the force with how he hits his head, bro, he's supposed to be laid up with a concussion somewhere. Yeah. So those things for me was so far out when it comes to reaching that they bothered me because I couldn't relate to that because that just didn't make sense. And I know there's a thing called movie magic, right?
Well, I mean, this is, there's movie magic, and then there's, you want it to be as relatively accurate as you can, right? This is similar to the Western on Netflix where they're shooting up the train. They have revolvers, and yet they have a scene of all the casings hitting the ground. It's like, dude, there are no casings hitting the ground if you're using revolvers. Right. So it's like they added that in for dramatic effect.